Hello and welcome to the Northern Fear channel. Now, this week we have seen a massive uproar about the cutting of foreign aid. Foreign aid is something that's tied to our GDP, and it's normally 0.7%, and it's been cut to 0.5%. And we're going to look through this article to see, what's been going on. But foreign aid is meant to go to nations that are underdeveloped or developing, where there's a lot of people in absolute poverty. And it's meant to go to feed them, to educate them, stuff like that. It's meant to basically help these people either get out of poverty or give them the basic necessities for life. And there's always been a debate on whether we should actually be doing that. Because obviously when we look at the UK, we have massive mental health issues within our population. We have massive issues with unemployment. We have issues with homelessness, especially within our veterans. Our veterans have a massive homelessness issue. A lot of our veterans that come out of the military don't get the support they need. We have a lot of kids in the UK in poverty, especially up north, which used to be the Red Wall, which has obviously shifted to being conservative more. And so we have a lot of poverty in our own country that is rather relative. And so the argument always is that we should be giving money to other countries who are in worse poverty than we are. And so there's always this argument going on. Now, Jacob Rees-Mogg is obviously a high-up Tory, and he is almost always going to defend the government. He is great for filibustering the committee stages of bills. He's really good at just taking up time and detracting that from whatever the opposition wants to talk about. And basically, it says here about how the leader of the House of Commons said the first duty of the British government is to its subjects, which it is. As a politician, your duty is to the people that elect you, your constituents. Your people are who you need to be paying the most attention to. If you're elected by a bunch of working class people, you should be representing them, and you have a duty to them people. And when them people are in poverty, unable to buy food, unable to, pay for their basic necessities, it's hard for a politician to justify not giving the British people what they need when they're going to give people around the world who haven't elected them the necessities instead. And this is always a big thing because relative poverty in the UK is quite high. Absolute poverty is very low. And the difference is relative poverty is about how our lowest income earners, obviously the people who are worse off in our nation, are in comparison to the people who are the best off. And relative poverty is fairly high within the north in the UK. But across the world, we have very low absolute poverty, and absolute poverty in elsewhere is obviously people don't have houses, people don't have food, people are stuck in complete severe poverty. Now remember, a key part of the last election was the Conservative government wanted to get elected on the ticket of, we're going to develop the north, we're going to level it up, we're going to get these people what they need. And so we're cutting 4 billion off of the foreign aid budget, and we're going to be putting that into the north apparently. If it goes to the north is another thing, and what it goes to help the north is questionable. And obviously there's been a lot of people like this person. The first duty of the British government is to its subjects. That's why the disabled people are treated like. That's why we've had 70,000 excess deaths so far this year, and why since 2009 the collective wealth of Britain's richest 1,000 individuals has increased by 450 billion. Now, there's something called Milanovich's elephant curve, and it explains globalism. And just to add into this, basically we see that everyone who's the lowest and worst off in society, in the world as a whole, they've seen massive developments in their wealth. And then you get to a point where you see the middle classes and working classes of the West, and they've had very little wealth growth or no wealth growth. And then you see the rich and the upper classes of the West who've had massive, excessive wealth growth. So what globalization has allowed, whether it's for the better or worse, is allowed these few individuals who are really powerful in the West to get massive amounts of money. It's allowed the working class and the middle class to stagnate in their wealth. And it's allowed the rest of the world to get out of poverty, 1.1 billion people out of absolute poverty because of globalism. And it's been a benefit for the world, not a benefit to the West. It's more cost. It's been a greater cost to the West. And people are saying about how it says British citizens are subjects, and how Rees-Mogg has to serve the people. And, you know, we are subjects of the nation. And probably could have been worded a bit better. Could have been citizens rather than just, you know, saying they're subjects. And people are picking up, and people are going to, if you disagree with someone, you're going to just say whatever you want against them. You know, if you dislike who's in power, you're going to just have a go about them. You're going to hate them. You're going to pick apart any minor thing they've done, even if it's unintentional. I don't think Jacob Rees-Mogg was intentionally trying to say, oh, you're subjects, I'm better than you. But obviously, he comes from a higher class than most people, so subjects is probably more the way he talks. And we are citizens, and the government is accountable to us. And we need to think about this, you know. Foreign aid is an interesting thing, because we give foreign aid to China for its developing film industry, and we give foreign aid to India, which is becoming one of the largest economies. And so we need to think about where our foreign aid is going, who's it's going to, and what we want to do with it. Are there people who need help? Yes. And are these people going to need help in any way means necessary? Yes. But there's certain nations that certainly do not need our foreign aid. Like China does not need our foreign aid. It's big enough on its own. It's about next 10, 15 years, it's probably going to be the biggest economy in the world. China does not need foreign aid for its movie industry. And I think, obviously, we need to think about what we want to do with foreign aid. And apparently 800 million is going to go to Scotland. Now, obviously, on the way that taxes are put, Scotland gets more for per citizen than anyone else. Then it's Northern Ireland, then it's Wales, and then it's the UK, then England even. And that's basically to try and level up the regions that haven't been... that haven't had the development and the funding that everyone else has had. And so it's all about just making sure that everyone else gets what they need and to develop these areas. But 800 million going to Scotland when it's might potentially leave the UK is an interesting thing. Because obviously Scotland's got a big thing on its... we go to this article. Scotland wants independence referendum too. Well, at least the Scottish Nationalist Party do. And that's being pushed massively by Nicola Sturgeon. Now, a few things to put. They lost the last referendum. Very close call. Very close call. They lost the last referendum. And in this time, she's pushing, and they've planned it a bit more now. Because before, they didn't really have a plan for when they left the UK. They didn't have a coherent plan, a coherent strategy, and it would be more of a crash out. And whoever gets Scotland free from the tyrannical English, as the perspective is, will be put down in the history books, probably as like a saviour. And so it's a great motivation for politicians to get Scotland away from England. Whether it's to the benefit or detriment of Scotland is yet to be seen, because unless they leave, we're not going to see if it's going to be better or worse for them. Now, Nicola Sturgeon has said that the UK's government and its opposition to the independence referendum too was unsustainable. Bear in mind that referendums that we've had recently are meant to be once-in-a-lifetime referendums, and people have been like really unhappy with it. People have been really unhappy because they've been wanting to consistently have a new referendum. And they're like, oh, well, in 5 years we can just have a new referendum. We can have a new referendum. And if we have a referendum and a majority wins, even a slim majority, it's normally stronger than the mandate that a government gets, because more people are likely to vote in a referendum than are likely to vote for the government. And we saw this with the 52 to 48% in the Brexit vote, and obviously the 55 to 45% in Scotland. Now, a once-in-a-lifetime referendum that was granted to them by the Conservative government in 2014 does not mean in 6 years you get to have another one. This constant, push for independence referendums, it's almost as if you're going to keep going until you get what you want, and it's going to really, really cause people to start distrusting the government. People are going to get bored of politics. It's like when Brexit has been the focus of this nation for so long, of the UK, people are getting upset with it. People are getting sick of it. you know, you're getting people who are like, oh no, we need to cancel Brexit. You're getting people saying we need to push through it. And you get a lot of people now who just can't be bothered with it anymore. You know, they really can't be bothered with it. And the problem with the SNP independence is if Scotland becomes independent, they're going to face issues. And the fact that they 6 years later they're going to try and push for one again is interesting. But should they be allowed to be their own nation or should they not? Because remember, devolution was a policy. Devolution is a policy thing, and it's a lot different to the way the federalism works in the US. Obviously, you have state rights, then you have the federal government, which have rights, and the federal government can't take away the rights of states. But in the UK, we have parliamentary sovereignty, which means at any point, Parliament can dissolve the devolved parliaments and take back its power. So, at any point that can happen, in theory. Obviously, it's unlikely. And obviously, Nicola Sturgeon is going to want independence as much as possible, because as soon as Nicola Sturgeon stops being the party leader, someone else is going to take over. And I reckon what's going to happen is we're going to get progressive party leaders consistently calling for independence, because whoever gets Scotland out of the Union is going to be idolised. Whether it's for the right reasons, whether it's for the wrong reasons, they will be put in history and they will be remembered. And I don't think in the middle of a pandemic, a crisis, an independence referendum is something that you should be leveraging. To sit there and be like, oh yeah, we need to get people to vote for this referendum in the middle of a pandemic is an ill-advised policy, and it makes you look like you don't care about people. It really does. And it's not going to be the best option for Scotland, because there's been so many people on the left who have been saying, oh, we have to be in lockdown. If you don't put us in lockdown, you don't care about people's lives and stuff. And then to sit there going on about how we need to have a referendum now, we need to have a referendum, is going to look really bad on the part of the Scottish Nationalist Party. And we're just coming out of lockdown soon, and we're going to be going back into this tier system. And this tier system's had massive criticisms as well, because London's in tier 2, whereas the north of the UK is in tier 3. When London has a higher R rate, higher infections, London's a much more urban hub and going to be more likely to spread the coronavirus, whereas the north is a bit more rural, has less urban centres, still fairly urban, but we're not as infectious, especially in the northeast. You know, they've been doing quite well. Manchester's not been doing the best, nor has London, but they're massive urban hubs. And to sit there and say that London's in tier 2, but the north is in tier 3 is very interesting. And for a government that wants to appear like it's helping the United Kingdom here, you know, like it's helping the north and committing to its manifesto promises of levelling up the north, it has been really poorly received. Because it's like a stab in the back of all the north, where they've lent their vote to the Conservatives and now they're getting punished for it. Anyway, I think that wraps up today. We've got 2 fairly good articles. I've went through with a quick description. I haven't read through every bit of it, but I'm just trying this out to see how this channel goes. Try and get better as time goes on. So yeah, have a nice day.